Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Oladele Ayorinde. I'm happy to welcome you to the Organhouse concert and seminar series today. I hope your day is going well as well for today. So today is another day, another fascinating and interesting one as the focus of today is quite unique in many ways and unique for the kind of discourse that it aims to generate and the type of conversation it also aims to advance. So shortly, I will introduce our guest for today. I will introduce our presenter. But before then, I'd like to remind you that this is Organhouse Concert and Seminar Series. Organhouse and Concert and Seminar Series is a special space in the sense that it is a space, alternative space in quote, for scholarly advancement, for scholarly rigor, creative advancement, and artistic experimentations of diverse forms. The project itself is multi-layered. One of the projects of the Organhouse Concert and Seminar Series is 100 years of mapping of Nigeria's musical history and development. We're talking about late 19th century down to today. And in that sense, that particular project belongs to what we called the Organhouse Documentation and Digitization Project, which is currently on as we speak. We also have other layers of project ongoing, including academic project that aims to renew, that reshape, advance, and interrogate common practice in different ways. So today's conversation is one of our ongoing series, which is Conversation in African Music Scholarship. Yeah, we have other layers to this conversation, including what we call music and AI dialogue. We've been having that. We also have other ones, a recent one, which is dedicated primarily to the advancement of emerging scholar, emerging voices. That's what we had last week. And it was quite awesome and quite impressive, to have Joshua to open that, to premiere that particular dialogue. So the emerging voices aim to create a space for Nigerian graduating students, particularly from upper undergraduate and also master students who needs a space to articulate or experiment or showcase their scholarly, creative, artistic experimentation and other forms of professional engagement. So we created this platform for them to be able to showcase what they have. So, but today's presentation is one of our ongoing discourse around African music. As you have seen in the poster for today, so today's discourse is around what we call, is around African art music, of course, which is usually one of the popular themes, which has been one of the popular themes on this platform. And we are proud to engage in this way and to also engage the idea of African art music on this platform. Thank you so much. So on today's occasion, I would like to introduce our scholar. To start with, I am happy to welcome Dr. Grace Olaoluwa. Hello, Grace. I call her Grace. She's my colleague. She's my friend here on many occasions. So Grace, hello, how are you today?
Oh, yes, I'm very well, thank you.
Yes, you are welcome to the Organhouse Concert and Seminar Series. So just by a brief introduction and or by sharing who Grace is with us, I'd like to share a short component, of brief aspect of Grace's biography, scholarly academic biography. Then after that, I will hand over the platform to Grace to present our work and share what she wants to share with us. Following that, we are also going to go back to, as usual, of course, Q&A session where our friends will have time to engage, ask questions, interrogate, and seek for more clarification on Grace's presentation. So by a short introduction, Grace Olaoluwa holds a doctorate degree in music, musicology, specializing in musicology from Stellenbosch University, South Africa. She currently lectures in the music unit of the Creative Arts Department, University of Lagos. Our research interests include interdisciplinary studies, musical art practice in Africa, creative and artistic research, African art music scholarship with a particular focus on and social meaning, particular focus on social meaning and the ethical imperatives of this realm also. More recently, she has been involved in the digital return project of the African Cluster of Excellence, working on project and research around appropriation, documentation, and digitalization of music heritage materials, and especially ways in which these materials can be engaged critically as knowledge production base, yielding new forms of cultural creation for sustainable national development in Nigeria. So that is just a brief bio of Dr. Grace Olaoluwa. So I am happy to welcome Dr. Grace Olaoluwa again. And also, I would like at this stage to hand over the platform to Dr. Grace to present our work. And let's see. And after the presentation, we would definitely like to engage. Thank you, Dr. Grace. The stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm audible enough.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, so the topic right before me is music semiotics and social construction of, in African art music scholarship. Okay, so before I start the presentation, I would like us to have some understanding. And the first is that we're talking about, African art music here, first of all. Secondly, we are talking about social construction, and we're talking about music semiotics. So these three are the main bane of our discussion today. And I draw extensively from my doctoral research, looking at, social meaning and how these are constructed, especially from the work I worked on. From the composer I worked on. So this comes to mind when I started charting certain territories with respect to meaning in music, and looking at, this, what we call art music. So I got to, extend my readings to, far back aesthetics in music, all of these theories, and looking at social construction and, different school of thought. So I will talk about music semiotic itself, coming from, post-colonial, period. And how, of course, if we talk in the African art music or African music parlance, these are not this underlying, idea new. So, but what then is the thing? Why do we have to discuss this? Okay, for me, first of all, we need to understand that African art music, I mean, will, is a designated kind of hybrid or synthesized music genre. And of course, it fuses, like, Western and African music elements. And this, for example, connotes that we are not just talking about African music here. It connotes that there is some elements of cultural value systems of the African, and now we are bringing a foreign, what I would call Western, music into play. So I then thought of, okay, so I know that in different circles, whether you call ethnomusicology, um, musicology, there are ways to which we do music, analysis in music. So, for example, I'm talking about the work of a particular composer, or I'm talking about a particular work. How do we approach it? I think that's the main interest of my, um, I mean, discussion today, of the seminar today. How do we approach it? I'm not necessarily telling us, to be, of course, what we're driving at with music semiotics will be approaching through a pluralistic view, but then not leaving music analysis itself, because I've seen a lot of works, maybe by African scholars. Let me say Nigerian, so that I don't, make the umbrella too wide. And then we say, okay, so we're not analyzing, some set of, some works, and then we cannot. There's this what we call, of course, the abstraction of, we many do not approach using, let's say, set theories, or Schenkerian analysis, or various form of analysis. So for the African audience, we approach, Nigerian scholars, like I've seen, I'm not generalizing here, but most of the works which I've seen. So I'm really interested in how we can, be work using all of these kinds of, analysis, and then still drive at our constructions. So, for example, I start with Inketia, who talks about, us being aware of intercultural processes in, creative work of contemporary African composers of art music. And he explicitly stated that aesthetic theories of African art music should, first of all, be cosmological, moral, and social theories. So, and since creativity itself is universal to human, it is also natural for us to presuppose that this expression should be guided by various of different philosophies. For Inketia, like some of us may be aware, he emphasizes on music not being considered as, even in the there is a shift since the 20th century. There's been a shift, but for us to look at it as art for life's sake, this is of course essential, as Nketia believes that music in Africa can be cultivated for both enjoyment in the context of part, integral part of social, then also as a scholarly enterprise. So in African societies, we often hear about, music being utilitarian, being functional, and having a social function within, with music, of course, sharing a name sometimes with particular, events, or, um, events, or sharing the name with, its title. So in essence, you know, various scholars like Blacking, they've had, they did ground research in this area. So, but music as a collective art can be linked to social life, like they say, but the utilitarianism in music should not only, be looked it should both be utilitarian and artistic. I would like to look at what Ivo Spookit said in this regard. that the further we look back into the history of humanity, I think is the second slide. The 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 the, the further we look into oh the history of humanity, the more we see music existing not in the form of entertainment alone or purely artistic manifestation, but as an element bound up in the most ethic details of daily social life. So, scholars like slide two, Valentine, Christopher Valentine, also noted from the Western perspective the ideological distortions, regarding seeing music in an atomized way, cutting it away from a structural intimacy with the social order. And then he said that, social structures crystallizes in musical structures. That is, the musical macrocosm um, replicate, replicates the social macrocosm. That's from Valentine's um, book on sociology of music. So the unity between art and social society is fundamental, with the two realms being inseparable. Like Valentine proposes that musicology should have the social aim to enlarge man's knowledge of himself and of the social development by elevating the relationship between music and society to full consciousness. We become better people. And scholars, of course, like Meki Inzewi, has also talked about the integrative nature of, performance in Africa, and you have a lot of writings in that regard. And I think I participated in one of the seminars, was it 3 weeks or 2 weeks ago, where we talked on all of this extensively. So I want to talk about music and social meaning. I quote from Scott's writing, where it says that musical meanings are not labels arbitrarily thrust upon abstract sound. These sounds and their meanings originate in the social process and achieve their significance within a particular social context. Therefore, musical signifiers develop in tandem with society. Before I, dive into the musical meaning, I should first say that in the realms of aesthetics, this would suit more into the postmodern thinking. Of course, we have the modernist. Of course, these are not periods, like these are ideas, ideologies, modernist and postmodern. Writing about postmodern music, Derek Scott, in this quote, asserts that musical meaning should be connected to social process and social context, which are usually, focused on style codes. And these style codes have been assigned to music over time, even in the West. The status of music as an autonomous art or a superstructural phenomenon that is free from or passively reflective of very passively, reflective of social, political, economic, or religious experience of human groups. Scott to say that it is important to first insist on music as an expressive device that establishes conventions through social practice and that relate to social changes. Of course, even in Western parents, this is now commonly accepted in Western discourses, music contributes actively to social experiences, but how? And even social identities. And of course, it means it is socially relevant. So, musical meanings, therefore, are to be negotiated and understood as social constructions. The question of music signification and meaning, the place of language, and systems of sign, all of this we call semiotics, in social institutions become important consideration for music theorists, musicologists, and one of the exploration of music semiotics, which Agau asserts, is that it applies in every circumstance to music that is produced, I think that's the third slide, and consumed, and it has to be adapted to the analysis of course, pretonal, tonal, and posttonal repertories. Music semiotics does offer, diverse methodologies to the analytical study of music, presenting itself as, a pluralistic enterprise, but does not have, a fundamental tenet or principle. This poses a challenge, of course, of devising theoretical models approach to the context in which music is produced and consumed. I think definitely I'll be expecting a question in this regard. So let me not depart from, deviate from what I have, I'm presenting. So, like I said, having a pluralistic, you know, approach to analytical study of music itself, and it poses a challenge of, okay, devising what theoretical models is appropriate, and and insisting on no singular theoretical models itself, you know, for the study of musical meaning, or musical sound and its relation to society is a challenge. However, Salga, that's Oscar Hernandez Salga, formulates this challenge in association with with this premise as follows. Before I quote Salga, I'd like to also bring to okay, let me quote him. Although I think it's the next slide, although music semiologists drink of many fountains, that's history, linguistic, psychology, sociology, mention them, and so on. Their conclusions and theoretical advances permeate the activities of the average musicologist or analyst only with difficulty. We accept that difficulty. Even less so do they register an impact on social sciences, which for its part continue to speak of the great importance of music in society without knowing how one could study the importance in terms of actual music sound. So before I proceed further, I would like to talk about, okay, of course, in semiology as a field, we've got several sorry, I'm trying to find that. Okay, so I continue. I'll get that later. Nicholas Cook, for example, conforms to this writing of Salga when he says that music critics or analysts have had to, they found it hard to assert unambiguously exactly how the linkage between music and musical structure is meant to work. he referenced Theodore Adorno, who mostly talks about the immanence of or transcendence in music and all of this. So Cook notes that there is a complex understanding of the role analytical approaches in music and social meaning play. It does so while understanding that, and for example, Adorno believes that it is music itself that presents the social problem through its own material. So that's one school of thought. I mean, music is the one who presents the social problem through its own material, through formal laws and techniques. So approaching the matter from the other end of the spectrum, Peter Martin locates the problem of social meaning at the social end of the relationship rather than, of course, in homologies within patterns of musical structure, which places social meaning as immanent in music. Martin explains that the basic disciplinary premise of sociology is that all such structures and meanings are socially constructed. And as a result, the concept of natural structures and meaning that are materially rather than socially grounded becomes the object of critique in the same way and for reasons for same reasons that the idea of the purely musical become an object of critique in musicological circles. Cooks then suggests that the tensions and contradictions located by Adorno in music's technical problems can be decoded by appropriate analysis of musical texts. Moreover, he asserts that if relationship between music and meaning is simply an arbitrary one, only conditioned by historical contingencies, then there is nothing in music that can constrain interpretation. And in fact, the only safe model of the would appear to be one. So talking about Saussurian, Ferdinand de Saussure, and of course Charles Sander Peirce. These are ground, you know, philosophers in the field of linguistics and philosophy, and who taught. These are semioticians basically, and they found laid various when we say science in language studies. However, for Salga in responding, looking at Salga's work, he notes that there's an important difference between the two semioticians, and that Peirce's theory would definitely aim to locate signification within a larger phenomenological project rather than describing, structures of signification. That is why many more researchers are drawn to his own concept, talking about Peirce's theory. So, for Agawu clarifies concerns about musical work and meaning when it questions the idea of music as a kind of language metaphor. After he examined the associations and signifying potentials between music and language, he concludes that even though music exhibits linguistic features as language, it is not language. And these features cannot account for the whole of the musical art. I hope we pick what that really meant on the other side of the divide. I mean, however, language and music are ineluctably intertwined. And what that means is that, what the linguistic analogy does for us when it provides, a secure basis of framing certain kinds of musical knowledge. There's also the balancing of the analysis, the analytical part. So this conclusion speaks to the possibility of constructing meaning from and within the musical act. For Agawi, it says that the interface between structure, that's musical structure, and design in music gives rise to a large and complex webs of association. Analyzing or analysis therefore extend beyond the morphological units of a musical work to include the recruitment of both, between structure and expression as a signification of musical meaning. So this musical meaning, hermeneutics, all of these are, just around the same. They tell us same. So for Agawi calls it introversive and extroversive semiosis. For the extroversive semiosis, which deals with the structure, musical analytical part of, the musical structure, it builds on the work of Roman Jacobson, while he also credits Leonard Ratner and Wendy Allenbrook. So for them, they talk more of topic theories, to gain insight into, music signification and, both structures. So when you look at the extroversive semiosis, we're talking about, the social. The introversive semiosis talks about the structure, musical structure. So there's the derivative, which they call topic theory or topic analysis. And this seems to allow for reconstruction of material as part of a broader social, knowledge. In this regard, Agawu points to Ratner perspective that topic are subjects that are incorporated into musical discourse and not just as subjects for musical discourse. So thus, topic theory or topic analysis impart autonomy to analysis based on number one, contextual claims, two, harmonic awareness, three, historic connotations that approach understanding of a musical work as, comprehensively as possible. That's what topic theory, deals basically with. So, so, if we recall Salga's view that it is the prerogative of music analysts, as anyone studying works, analyzing music, studying works that are outside the Western tradition, to reconstruct, topic or the analysis of their work historically and socially. This way, the search for musical meaning will depart from, of course, the impulse of the new musicology. New musicology, we talk about 20th century and down, which in its Convener early beginnings aimed to rectify a Western bias towards autonomous structure and analysis. So, for me, reading social meaning in my thesis, for example, was a kind of, a balance. Trying to have a balancing act between, musical practice, of course, rooted in colonialism, African art music as a whole, then the expressive, contemporary Nigerian reality, social, political reality, because that was what I really read in that. And then looking at musical processes of composition, performance, reception, and then deriving meaning in all of this. By this, we can contribute to, performing a kind of musicological discourse that balances these considerations in manners that makes African art music engage. There is an interesting tension in the fixedness of meanings and communicative potentials in art music compositions, and the themes of social, historical, political critique that suggest social issues rather than contemplation. So a kind of art music that is not divorced from, what I'm asking for is a kind of art music that is not divorced from, you know, those societal concerns, the cosmological concerns, as well as having a pluralistic view to glean from, such analysis. Musical meanings would then serve as, social construction. And we should also bear in mind that it doesn't mean that it's not gonna be contradictory, because of course they communicate different things. Music communicate different things to different people. But these contradictions lies beyond the musical sounds themselves and are located in the significations, that's the extra musical reality of such society. So we can contribute to performing this kind of musicological discourse that, gives such balancing, and it helps to situate, music scholarship in Nigeria, because it then takes cognizance of both all social, economic, political, religious, or all in the terrain and in Nigerian milieu. And these are very important because it then qualifies musical works, or African art music works, compositions as self-contained aesthetic objects that do not only relate to, metaphysics. I'm talking about abstract notion of value, of meaning. So by this, you reach, both scholars, researchers, enthusiasts, or people who are drawn to music based on maybe the social messages. And then we can then chart, African scholarship in this way. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Grace Olaoluwa. Thank you. I think that's quite interesting, fascinating, and deep in the sense that you took us to a level at which we can start thinking about analytical discourse, which something that I've been part of this conversation, at least in the last few months. And I remember you also mentioned, you referenced one of the conversation within which we also engage this particular line of discourse. So thank you so much for bringing this to us today, and we are so happy to receive this from you. In a few seconds, I just want to lay out a few questions to you, point out a few segments to provide the kind of clarity. Then after that, we'll open to our friends and colleagues who have been waiting to engage you as, what's like semiotics, topic theory. Of course, they are popular somewhere, but they might not be popular to many of our colleagues here. And it's been nice for us to dig into this thing. So the first thing I really want to commend you for is the fact that your argument is quite important at this particular time in history, negotiating or advancing a pluralistic approach to musical analysis. Of course, like some of us know, this is also something that has been on for years, at least almost 80 years or 100 years old now. I'm talking about when we go back to the 1940s, even the discourse around William Sapire and his analysts who were making the same argument for musicology at the time also. But this is great. So my 2 points to start with, the discourse of semiotics is an interesting one, and I'm happy that we have that today. Yeah, semiotic is basically study of, Dr. Grace has explained, study of sign. But semiotic itself does not stand on alone. It stands with another layer called semantic, the study of meaning. So both works together as one. And as Dr. Grace explained, this discourse is rooted in sociology, particularly linguistic sociology, which is championed by many scholars. Particularly, one of them is the Atosa Eric Sassorian, Sassorian school of thought. And also, of course, in anthropology and musicology, people have taken it up in different ways. And one of the popular scholar in this way, particularly in social sciences, I would say anthropology, is Clifford Geertz, who spoke about, semiotic analysis, study of sign in society. We'll get to that shortly. But what I find very, very important here and very interesting that we need to talk about is the relevance of this conversation to Nigerian school of thought, Nigerian scholarship, analysis of African art music. So I am looking forward to, in this conversation, for us to get to a particular composition and demonstrate ways in which this conversation can really, really, really help us in Africa, because this is very important and we need to move in this particular direction. So semiotics, study of sign; semantics, study, understanding of meaning of sign. What are signs in this context? Logos. By the fact that music is represented on 5 lines and 4 spaces, that is a sign. And the ability to decode these 5 lines and 4 spaces to make music we are performing, it is part of this broader discourse of untangling, decoding signs. I just want to bring that to our doorstep for us to understand that. So that is one of the, I think the peak of this conversation today is some notes on discourse, things people do with music. In the boards, you see different signs across the board, painting, these are all signs. So the complementing part of it is the semantics approach, analysis, which is breaking down the signs into meanings and getting into the meaning. That's semantics on the one hand. Then on the other hand, in the music discourse, semiotics is a bigger discourse. Like I said earlier, it has been on for many years. And in the 80s, like Dr. Grace explained, there's another school of thought that came to, open this conversation to a next level. One of them is Professor Leonard Ratner, who happens to be the teacher of Professor Kofi Agawu, as Dr. Grace explained. So Leonard Ratner was a Stanford musicological professor who advances the semiotic analysis to a next level. Then he called it topic theory, topic theorization. That's what he calls it. And what is that? This is not the conversation for today, of course. We'll bring somebody or we'll do it justice to that sometime. But the important thing about topic theory and Dr. Olaoluwa's presentation today is that it brings us down to Nigeria. Art music is a big deal, and our argument is quite on point for this kind of conversation. So topic, ideas. So it has become a huge school, a huge concept in the last 40 years in musicology. And today, people are now taking topic beyond. It was initially within classical music analysis, particularly the works of Beethoven, Mozart, Haydn. Topics, the classical music era down to early romantic era. But today, indigenous music scholars in music education, scholars in music and therapy across different popular music are now using topic theory to analyze society in a broader sense, as Dr. Olaoluwa explained. Then let's get to the main point now. So in the case of Nigeria, the question for me, perhaps the first question would be, before that, I need to say something also. This is just a create context for us. When we talk about semiotic. Now, let's demonstrate something very simple. This can help some of us who are new, on this platform and also to this kind of conversation. Semiotics, or let's say operating two ways, the signified and signifier. What is signifier? The music we see, the ways we see music, the way we see things, our brain connects to that thing. So I'm a pianist, for instance. If I see Hallelujah chorus on the score itself is a signified. So my brain connect to it. It sent a message. Then the signifier itself, the music, the score, the first bar, the crochet, the combination of, so they send another message to my brain that is called the signified. So it's signified in my brain and I play it to the world. That is semiotics. The signifier stands on its own. The person interpreting, engaging it in his or her brain is the material touches and send another message. So what it means for that person in person's brain is called it signifies something. And that's what that person is going to escalate, interpret. This is not about music alone, it's about everything. When you see a sign on a bus, you see a sign in your house, the kind of message they send to our brain, that is signified. That material is there. Hundreds of thousands of people will see that same sign. It will send a different message to them. And the message to them makes sense to them based on their context, their cultural context, because everything is cultural. Every meaning is cultural. So when you see somebody talking about Higu in a particular way, in other culture, it's in a different way. But the signifier is the same thing everywhere. But the kind of what is signified to people is also shaped by people's social, cultural, and political context. So let's get back to the African Nigerian art music. Dr. Grace Olaoluwa, thank you so much for this. What is then, can you provide a kind of a basic, perhaps an example of how we can, like, for instance, from your last statement, you mentioned, pluralistic approach. Let's say in the context, I'm sure you have studied in your work, you did a lot on Dayo Oyedun's work. In the case of Dayo Oyedun, let's say one of the compositions, is there any way you could demonstrate for us the ways in which we could analyze that music using semiotic analysis and to signify all the, to show us, ways in which this analysis can actually help us push forward? Because the basis foundation of analysis is understanding. Then in your presentation, you argued for multi-layered understanding, which is quite impressive. But the question is, are there basic examples you could show us in that area?
Okay, so I wish I could like show some scores and how I did, I approached some of my analysis. So, and I also still have some things to say in regard to what we even send to our readers as authors, as scholars. Let's say, okay, my approach to social engagement or social meaning in, for example, Dayo Edun's work. Remember first that these are choral works, they have text, because there's also the other layer of having instrumental, works, isn't it? And then we still read meanings to all of this. So, and I've had to, even in the course of this presentation, preparing for this presentation, delve into a number of articles, whether within Africa, and beyond, to see how all of these things are, has been advanced beyond, my understanding, or like I said. So, for example, what semiosis or musicology itself, because there's also this baggage of ethnomusicology and approaches to music analysis, or explaining music. So, for for example, we would not leave structures out. Like what even Agao argues for, the introversive and extro versus semiosis. We don't leave structure out. We don't basically talk about, I mean, like I said, the baggage of African arts music already tells us that it is not purely African, and we need to know that. So we don't leave the ground understanding of musical structure. So you look at the music, you analyze it, based on you, because you understand the music more. Perhaps it's in your language. I mean, you analyze it structurally, and then you add significations based on your understanding. And for example, this is with text, it's not textless. So I could understand, for example, the works that, I mean, the particular works which were mostly sociopolitical. So you take it to the realm of, sociological analysis, or political realm, or economic realm, and then you link it with the musical structure and your own significations of all of these meanings. So with that, I mean, let's say I pick up that work, and I mean, I'm able to analyze this using, all of what I've just mentioned, and somebody else picks up that work. So in one way, we are performing a musicological, you know enterprise, a musicological analysis of a sort, and then we're now bringing into, conversations based on writing, based on research about American visa. And of course, I mean, if I would analyze American visa now, I will add a lot more. Look at Japa syndrome. Look at all of these socio-political realities of Nigeria. Do you understand what I'm saying in that regard? And then I'm looking at the musical structure, and then, signifying meanings based on the sound. And I mean, even with the chords, the cadential, of course, all of these works are, what we call, um, in the tonal range, not pretonal or atonal. Do you understand? And many Nigerians. So, in essence, what this argument is saying is that someone who is not concerned about structures and all of this can still have, a good understanding of this work, and then listen to it, and, also derive their own meanings in different ways. So I would also link this in, for example, having to publish one of my works and publishing in, a circle, I mean, not musicology, a publishing house. And I try to, okay, so how can I dish out this work such that somebody would appreciate it and will be able to advance the discourse? Do you understand what I'm saying? And I didn't need to use all of those, structural analysis. So, for example, music semiotics does not tell us particularly, like we have in the musicological circle, where you say, okay, I'm specifically using Schenkerian analysis, I'm using set theories, I'm, putting codes and all of this. I mean, you analyze based on, hello, you
Hello.
analyze, yeah, based
Yeah.
on, so it first comes from the understanding of even the person analyzing how much of musical understanding do you have in terms of harmony, music theory, and all of those, before you can even engage in all of those kinds of analysis. I hope it's clear enough. I hope
Yes,
I answered your question.
definitely. It's clear enough. Yeah. Yeah, let's open, then we'll come back to this. Of course, what you're talking about is structural analysis and the contextual analysis, which is not new again. you mentioned ethnomusicology earlier, perhaps this is why I need to say this. Ethnomusicology itself has always actually responded to the argument of ethnomusicology as a field emerged in the late 40s, early mid-50s as a response to the argument of semiotic, the difference, the tension between the school of thought that embraces semiotic and those who embraces semantic approach. There are many scholars who does not believe in semiotic, who believe in semantic. Stephen Feld is one of them. If you check the Karoo, his work among the Karoos, among the, in Papua New Guinea, in the people in the 80s. So what we call sociology of musicology, whatever, music sociology. But the point is, ethnomusicology brings these ideas together in many ways, tying them together. Ethnomusicology believes in structural analysis, and they also provide contextual analysis. To break all these things down, what we are saying is that the difference between structural analysis, chord 1, chord 4, chord 5, chord 6, chord 7, scale, or whatever, all the technical terms, and explaining the meaning of the text, why the song is so important. Is this speaking of somebody's oriki? Why must we listen to that song? Is it speaking of political issue? So this is the two difference. And bringing it together in the late 40s is the basic argument of the field today called ethnomusicology. Ethnomusicology. Of course, there are layers to ethnomusicology, but that is the basic argument. And even ethnomusicology, if you check the first few monographs, for instance, The Enemy Way by a scholar, one of the 4 founding fathers of ethnomusicology, who is actually a Stanford professor of musicology, is called The Enemy Way. His name is called David McAllister. It's one of the first published books in ethnomusicology. It's called The Enemy Way. It's free online, but you can check it. Enemy Way demonstrates what we are talking today by David McAllister. Yeah, so Enemy Way demonstrates beautifully by putting in one side, in one monograph, doing what he called the structural analysis, talking about scale, transcribing scale, the chord changes, the chord analysis, then also providing a deeper contextual understanding of the music within its social context. The second book also, but let's leave it there. Let's come back to that. Okay. At this moment, I would like to open to our friends who would like to, of course, we've had a series of questions in the chat box. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Gani Kale, you want to leave? Oh, that's great. Definitely, we are going to have a follow-up session on this. Mr. Gani Kale is asking me if we are going to have a follow-up session. Definitely. I agree with you. This is a daring topic because, yes, it's a build on what we have been discussing in the last few weeks or a month today. Yeah, so let's open to our friends and colleagues online. If you have questions, particularly on this particular area, you are welcome to jump in at this moment. Okay, I think we have Dibio. Dibio, let's have you.
Good afternoon, Dr. Ayo.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon.
Dr. Olaoluwa, good afternoon. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
That was a great one. Well done. I highly appreciate it. Quick one. I want to share my screen, and I will, because I actually think this topic is actually a major one in understanding African music. Emphasis have always been laid on the language of African music, but from some of us who have taken time to, research into our traditional music, I think semiotics is actually the key to having that give meaning to African music. I would like to share my screen, and I want you to relate this topic of discourse now to my screen. Just a moment. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Bedu from Epe. It's actually the palace drum. it's one of my research outings there. You could see the 3 marks there. I have so many of them. It's a sign which actually, don't let me go. Could you relate this to the topic at hand? Hello, Dr. Grace.
Yes. Without a sound.
No, without a sound. Does it make meaning?
Of course, it does make meaning, but when you talk about semiotics, we need the actual music sound. Or music
That's the context. Of course, this relates in a different context. Talking about semiotics in a different context, that needs to be very, very clearly explained before we go into this. But within this context of this presentation, this one is, there must be sound, and that's the context.
Okay, let me understand. In the context of this topic, there must be sound.
Yes.
Before meaning.
The actual music sound. Yeah.
The actual music sound, that is the starting point of engaging other resources.
Okay. Now, I think we are limited to sound, but in this context, in the context of this picture that I'm showing, the signs here, it's a major determinant. The signs in the sound, in appreciation, in giving meaning to the music.
Yes, DBO, this is, when we go to another level, it is under what we call iconography.
Okay.
It's another context. Yeah, it's called iconography. There's another layer to it. Then we also take it into the study of what we call folklore studies. It's under material culture. All the signs, all the animal, whatever, they all have their own layers of meaning. And there are more than 200 years of scholarly discourse with theories upgrading on 13 years basis that are that are applicable, that one can use to analyze this and provide meaning. In fact, this is the basis of folklore study, which is a big deal in North America today.
Okay, thank you very much. That's my question. I have to.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Kolawole, do you want to ask your question, please? I can see you are talking about Ferdinand Saussure, of course, Astorian School, Charles Peirce, of course, definitely. Do you want to ask your question? Please ask your question and let Dr. Olaoluwa respond to you. Mr. Ganikale. Yeah. I don't know if you're already in your if you have joined.
Something on the chat.
Yes, I think it's an interesting, he said earlier that he wants to join another meeting. I don't know if he has joined another meeting, but in case he's here to join the meeting, to be nice to, he dropped something. Okay, let me read while others are getting ready their materials. Okay, the first one. Here are some of my thoughts in summary. One thing is certain, we cannot approach semiotics without addressing cultural identity. Of course, what DBO is just saying right now, and social change in the global art, on how signs, symbols, and signification function within African art music. Perfect. Ferdinand de Saussure and Charles Peirce have written on how African music uses a variety of symbols, melodic, rhythmic, and instrumental to communicate meaning, definitely. Unlike Western music semiotics, African music meaning is deeply tied to local languages, definitely. Proverb, histories, social practice, and analyzing this in context is essential. Of course, that is what I said earlier about the long journey of the field called ethnomusicology and what has become in the last 40 years. It is a fight between context, content. We have to consider the multimodality role of non-musical elements, dance, ritual, performance in conveying meaning. African art music often integrate these elements into a unified semiotic system that transcends sound alone. Of course, we should be exploring how African art music is shaped by social, political and economic factors. These include how colonialism, post-colonial identity, modernization, and globalization have influenced musical forms, practices, and their meanings. Many African musical forms were suppressed, transformed, or co-opted under colonial regime. Of course, we need to explore how colonial and indigenous musical forms coexist, compete, or merge in contemporary African music. I think that is the focus of Dr. Olaoluwa here today. Academic exploration of music semiotics and social construction in African art music demands a nuanced interdisciplinary approach, of course. It involves deep engagement with indigenous musical knowledge, historical context, and contemporary social realities to understand the complex meaning encoded in African musical forms. These are so much, okay, there are so much to say on this discourse, but I have to leave now. Hopefully next time. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Then the last one thing is certain, we cannot approach semiotics without addressing cultural. Okay, I said that earlier. Okay, I think that's all for now. Yeah. So Dr. Olaoluwa, what do you have to say there? I think he also addressed some of the things DBO was talking about. Of course, from my own preliminary stage is that the context, when we shift the gaze to, anytime we shift the gaze to the that's what I call it, that preface arts music or African art music, it's a different conversation compared to when we say African music. Of course, both terms are quite ambiguous in the sense that one needs to lay the foundation from day one. This is what I mean by this. Yeah. So the context today, I agree with both DBO and of course, Mr. Gani Kale, that we need to put all this in context. Yes, but in the art music context, the music is a first runner. I think that's the thinking tank. So I need to hand over to Dr. Grace, please. Hello, Dr. Grace.
I'm expecting conversations in this realm. I mean, like, let's discuss, let's talk, and let's argue things out, or maybe not argue things out. Like, so it's very contextual. We're talking here about African art music. Like I said, art music. So, and I told you my concerns in this presentation. Like, I'm not talking about all, kinds of music, not African music. So, talking about the intelligibility of African art music and how we can approach analysis. And I'm very much more concerned with the academic structure and what, I know even in the undergrad, the course called, is it tonal harmony or tonal counterpoint or tonal, all of these courses that are being, that are being offered, where do they lead to? I'm not talking about, even in our composition, where do they lead to? Beyond composition, for those who analyze, those who critique, where do they lead to? I was reading a particular article yesterday, about musical meaning, all of this, and I would say Stock, you may know, of course, Marilee Stock, almost theorizing about how, even as performers, we should, she comes from, the phenomenological, not just talking about performing analysis, but, as a performer, you analyzing, the work, looking at all of these kinds of close reading, like we call it, the Anglo-American paradigm or approach to analysis, or all of this, semiotics, basically, and then how this informs our performance of such work, and how we as performers, because as performers, not just composers, you then have a rich understanding of this work if you come from, analytical point of view, and them down to the public. Let people be able to. I'm not talking about program notes here. I'm talking about musical meaning, how we can talk about this work and our view and the way we perform this work. Of course, my own presentation is not about the performance aspect of it, but this is someone coming from, an analysis and meaning, especially in performance, and how we can come to the truth content of a word, of a work. So, I mean, if, for example, let's say you as, Ayo, you perform, I want to say, let's talk about Nigerian. I mean, was Ayo Bankoli's cantata, Easter cantata, and Festa cantatas, and I pick some Aquabot, still, one of the Festa cantata, and as a performer, I have done my analysis coming from the semiotic lens, and I put this down, and you perform the same work, you do your analysis. Like I said, there are contradictions, there are tensions, but with these readings, I remember having a contribution in my thesis talking about how they can be nascent, space for us to extend the discussions of this work, talking about beyond the musicological now. Of course, the actual sound is here. We are the one bringing all of these meanings to it. And then we're now extending all of this discourse to how, we can have an engaged, scholarly discourse. I hope.
Definitely. Okay, I think DBO is there. Then Joshua David, who is there again? Yeah, Dr. Florence Nweke, Sheyi Ajibade, Adisa Abiodun is there. Temitope Jaisimi. Okay, let's go. Please, let's Temitope Balade. I think DBO, let's have you. So while we're waiting for Joshua David and co. Of course, Dr. Samuel just is there. Okay, yeah, we have a full house.
No, actually, it was. I'm okay. Dr. Olaoluwa has clarified my thoughts.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay. Okay. I think what we can. Okay. Joshua, let's have you. Okay, that's great. Let's have you, please.
Hi, good day, everybody. It might be a little noisy. I'm trying to. So, but I would just ask, first of all, we're trading in very, very muddy waters when we bring up these kinds of conversations. Semantics, semiotics, so actually, these things have been highly contested. So trading in very, very muddy waters. And I think the first clarification will be for us to understand that when things like the words like analysis, meaning, it's not necessarily just what does the text of the music say, or the line is ascending, so it means it's talking about the height. All those preliminary things that we would usually do in analysis. But my sort of provocation for Dr. Grace would be to what extent do you think some of these issues, particularly with semantics, and this is what I mean. I'm doing a work on the place of the voice. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago, and I was looking at what the performance of the classical voice would mean for the African. Now, in engaging that, the first challenge was this conception of the erosion that I was asking Dr. Agatha a couple of weeks ago. Now, why am I bringing that up? I'm bringing that up because I think that until we begin to clarify the layers of meaning or the layers of cultural semantic meanings that we can bring out from the performance of classical music in Nigeria. Again, I'm trying to run away from the word art music, African art music. We know that baggage already. I'm trying to run away from that. But I'm saying that African art music itself in Nigeria, or art music in Nigeria, is complicated enough such that when we begin to, I have read Dr. Grace's thesis. I mean, beautiful work. But I'm saying beyond such work that ties culture to musical elements. So with the works of Ayorinde and all of that, very, very beautiful culturally, when it's culturally engaged. But outside that cultural engagement, what do works like that speak to African art music? Another example is that I was in a seminar, back in Nigeria, with a couple of, and it was a postgraduate seminar, and a respected professor asked this presenter, all right, and he said, "What other meaning would you get from vocal music aside from the meaning of the text?" So my question is, take away the text, right? And then let's begin to talk about the foundations of meanings that come from music, because those two things are different layers. And that's where I'm going to. And I use the singing voice as an example to say, now the singing voice is one. Take away whatever voice is coming, because that's where some of the confusion comes in. Oh, it's not in English, it's in other languages and all of that. Take away that language now. How do you use semantics to begin to analyze, or semiotics actually, to begin to analyze some of the traditional intricate nuances that we find in African art music? So, and the ability to blend these two things, it will take us around plenty, lots of theoretical issues. But if you can, in a couple of minutes, help us begin to take away these peripheral layers of things like text, like lyrics, like because the drum is brown, so therefore it must be from a particular place, or because the drum is two-faced. All this type of almost very mundane arguments that we have. So at what level do we begin to bring in this thing into serious engagement with meaning? I'll leave it at that. Allow Dr. Grace. Thank you.
Okay, I think she's back now. Dr. Grace, are you back?
Yes, I'm back. Thank you.
Okay. So that's a point for you from Joshua.
Okay, so Joshua, thank you for your question. So, like I said, all of these things are ongoing discussions, and everyone, or let me say, we mostly have where we lean towards in terms of understanding, in terms of approach to music studies. Let me put it that way. So, and I know that on one hand, it might be overbearing when we hear some of these arguments. For me, although semiotics itself would mostly lean towards, significations, maybe from text and all of it. But look at topic theory, which I mentioned. And these are the forerunners of, Ratner and all of these people who talk about Roman Jacobson. They are the ones who started, this music aspect of semiotics. Let's say, for example, topic theory, which started even using Western art music. You hear the works of Felix Mendelssohn, you hear the works of Haydn, and you are able to bring significations and meaning to them without the text. And this also comes from a ground understanding of history. This comes from a ground understanding of harmony, analysis, music theory. I use that very loosely because it becomes very thick. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, for example, and these are, like I said, deals with, pretonal, tonal and even post-tonal works, and they come on higher level, and is better put on attitudes, aesthetic attitudes. Some call it postmodern attitudes to musical analysis. So, talking about African artworks, it's on different layers. People who have composed, that's why we call it African artworks in the first place. Like African art music. And they are on different levels. You find very serious, engaging works in terms of structure. You find those that lose, you find those that folklore, so, but we should not, I'm not making the umbrella. So, if, for example, I studied music and I want to analyze the work, how do I start? I think that's what music semiotics is about. And what kind of work are you even analyzing? So very importantly, we can analyze works that are not with text and still draw significations from them. I don't know if I am answering what you're saying. What you asked.
Yes, thank you so much.
And while we're waiting for that, any other question, contribution, you want to push the conversation forward, or there's something we are here to talk about? Yeah, we are open for that. We have another contribution from somewhere. While we are waiting for that, I think Joshua's point is quite important, you see, because even like Mr. Gani Collins said before he left, so even the very mesh, of course, context matters, and that's the context of today's work also. But art, music, semiotics, analysis, they are fraughted. They are heavy and ambiguous in the sense that they are problematic words to start with, and that's why I began with that very, very brief what I call breakdown, of discussion in terms of trying to take us back quickly to some areas, because leaving it like that without that kind of mediative process, it will definitely invigorate some other things. Like, for instance, look at what Mr. Olaoluwa said, that it's allude to colonial approaches. Yeah, of course. Anything, if we talk about music analysis, art music, from the first mention, like Joshua also alluded to that also, they are problematics in many ways. They are very problematic in many ways. But the question that Dr. Olaoluwa is, what she's driving at is simply another way to engage even how we analyze, which we can, by extension, we can push our argument under the rubrics of post-colonial discourse or decolonial thought. Just that she has not called it that way. But the point that arguing for another ways of understanding or multiplicities of ways or multiple ways of doing analysis is also a way to challenge the norm that Joshua is referencing, also Mr. Olaoluwa is referencing. So the basic point is, I think to even break it down, the very idea of music analysis is for understanding. It's about knowledge. What is in that music? So the challenge we've had is that to analyze music and 145, and that is it. I think that's a challenge we've had in the past. But right now, since different form of conversation, knowledge, advancing from one layer to the others are coming forth. So people have started embracing other forms of, trying to do analysis in different ways. And I understand when, Dr. Grace also asked, why are we doing this? The question is, in Nigeria, it's fixed in different way. In other places, they have been able to mediate this tension. Yeah, they've been able to do that. Okay, let's have you, Kishan.
Thank you. So you mentioned something now that I want to sort of push forward again and just touch the places that are a little irky in our conversation as Nigerian scholars. There is this issue of analysis must be theoretical. Now the first question is when we start conversations around analysis, the first thing would be, and this is something I have noticed in ethnomusicological circles, or in what is called ethnomusicological circles in Nigeria, is that analysis must be theoretical. So after writing all that you've written and all that you've done, they would always ask you, what is your own contribution? And what your contribution should be is that, for example, you take a music by it could be anything. You will be asked to, what chord is being played here? What is this? And do, you must have pictures of scores and you've broken down something and all of that. But my first thought to some of those things is, yes, there is theoretical in terms of what is broadly known as music theory, but, and Dr. Grace could help us in this regard, what layer of meaning will bringing in issues of bringing in analytical tools like semantics and semiotics help us to, or how, I think how is the more appropriate question. What is the process? All right, and this is actually really for many of the scholars, sort of back home. What's the process of engaging these semantic and semiotic tools? Why again, the extent to which we decide or we determine what is theoretical is the jury is still out on that conversation. We can keep saying this is theoretical, that is not theoretical, and all of that, what we call theory and all of that. But I'm saying, in this so-called music theory that we do in our analysis, where at the end of the day, we're doing music theory that is, chord 4, chord 5, at most some 7 chords here and there, because really, what level of theoretical in that sense depth do we find from some of these things? But that's another conversation. So I'm saying, how do we engage these tools? Can Dr. Grace give us a breakdown that will encapsulate sort of the actual model? If we pick anything, pick any music, if we're staying with African art music, if we pick something, maybe Lule or something like that, and I know some of those things are already problematic in themselves because they already carry a meaning that is attached to them because of the text that we're hearing. For example, if you say Lule, it already carries meaning because of the text that we're hearing. The first thing everybody will go to is the sociological angle and say it's talking about the society. It's talking, can't you hear what it is saying? Look, it's even relevant in today's world with all that is going on in Nigerian politics and all of that. But I know that the argument of Sesor, the argument of the signified and the signifier, is that these meanings are not static.
Yeah.
That these meanings are not static. And so if you take a Lule, for example, and say that all that music is saying is just what the text is saying, then I think we have already shot ourselves in the leg. And that's why at the end of the day, we come up with 5 pages of analysis and that's all. So I'm saying, Dr. Grace, can you help us in the process? And like I said, Ilule is an example. If we take Ilule, take away that lyrics of Ilule from it, all right? Or that's one layer. How do we employ semantic and semiotic tools now to begin to break down the different codes that are there? I mean, for example, there is a work that is just published on Mozart's Magic Flute. And that work addresses only the Masonic interpretations. So it takes the codes and says in the opera, you would see that all the characters are in threes. So there are three Queen of the Knights. There are three servants of the Queen of the Knights. There are three, what is it called? Sort of gods and all of that. And that those threes has meaning in because Mozart was a Mason. It has meaning in Masonic circles. So those type of deep things that take away from, I mean, we could say the Queen of the Night sang, and then this is the chord that she sang. But deep meanings like that, that's what I'm saying. How do we employ semantic and semiotic tools in African art music that will give us, you know, deep theoretical analysis? All right, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's
So,
have one more, then you answer the two together, then we'll go to the next. So let's have Shay, then we'll come back to Dr. Sama, just say.
Oh yeah, sorry. Sure. Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Grace, for your presentation. I mean, I just wanted to ask, I mean, since we're talking about African art music and also we're talking about semiotics, and from your presentation, I picked a few things, talk about intercultural music, and I mean, I kind of understand that this intercultural approach could be, I mean, brings these two words together, Western and African. However, I kind of think there is always an hierarchical placement of how these things work, because when we call African art music intercultural, I tend to believe that African ideologies and African storytelling and African elements should be placed higher above whatever Western education or Western entry has bring into this music, so that we don't see it as, I mean, the polarity and this plurality says African music and then Western music. It has, I mean, it should be hierarchically placed so that we don't have that, we don't have Western ideology over African music. And to differentiate these two words, I think there are some of the elements of music that has been approached or introduced by African scholars, like African pianism and all those things, that when we listen to the music, we're able to differentiate what Western music, if this music is still sounding Western or is still sounding African. So in my question, and also in relation to talking about semiotics and meaning, is when we analyze music, do we look at it from a Western perspective, or do you analyze from an African perspective? And meanings are what make this analysis different. The meanings and the signs in the music, they kind of tell us what approach or what it sounds like. So how do you analyze music? How do you analyze the music? What are the signs? What are the symbols in that music that helps us to understand or to differentiate the Africanness in the music, the Afrocentric ideas in the music, rather than analyzing from a Western ideology? That's number one. And when meaning changes, because the society also changes, how do we address changing meaning now in our analysis? Is it through the cultural changes, sociological changes, or do we address it based on existing theories from the past? Are these meanings allowed to be dynamic, rather? Thank you.
Okay, let's have Dr. Grace, please.
okay, so I'll start with Joshua, but Shay, sorry, I didn't get the second part of the question, but when I get there, I mean, talk about that again. So, Joshua, I do clearly understand you're asking how we can analyze, you know, a work of art, music, without necessarily leaning more towards the sociological. Is that it? Can you hear me?
Well, Yeah, well, to an extent, but yes, it's. I mean, if you start from there, it take us to other things.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, semiotics, like I started with, if we lean more towards this Agao school of, I mean, those he built on, we have the extroversive, we have the introversive. So yes, these sociological constructions are very important. It's not even just about, even musicology from the 20th century lean more towards that. And we have works of Theodore Adorno in that line, even though there are still certain nuances, that we wouldn't lean towards if we want to go the African, deep into African Afrocentric thinking. So, but yes, we can analyze music, and that's, in fact, like I said, the structural analysis. When I say structural analysis, now I'm talking about it very loosely. I'm not talking about a particular theory, whether Schenkerian or set theory or whatever. I'm talking about, we need to look at the harmonic awareness we need to have an harmonic awareness of the composition, the contextual claims. That's the sociological. And then the third one is the historic connotations. So I can't pick up a work of art without or without linking it to music history. As much as we have African, let me just cite an example. You want to teach voice as a voice teacher. Would you say, oh, because I'm teaching jazz technique? There are still groundings, there are still things that foreground learning how to sing. Breath control, all of those things are there. Understanding the voice mechanism itself is very important, regardless of what area you're going to delve into. So harmonic awareness, historic connotations, having an understanding of music history, and having an understanding of, we cannot talk about structure, you cannot talk about analysis without having an understanding of how these things have moved from various periods and thinkings towards this. So those are very important before we bring about that's what topic theory even talks about. Before we bring about, all of the contextual claims, the contextual sociological, and of course, and this I think it's into Sheyi's Sheyi's question. As much as they can shift, but you have analyzed the way you can analyze, and this can be a subject, whether the extra musical shifts, or it's like I said, I did something on American music. Looking at the what we have in the society now about Jackpot, if I was to analyze that music again, I will incorporate all of these discourses around that. But I didn't do much of that when I analyzed the music at that time. So content analysis, all of those things are, basic tenets of, semiosis. But we should not forget that, the subjects that are incorporated into musical discourse are, something we bring upon it, and they could read different connotations to different people, but there is something underlying which everybody, a common understanding which people come from, based on, historic connotation. I hope that is clear.
Okay. Can we have Dr. Sama Joseph, please? Dr. Joseph, okay.
Yeah. Hello.
She was going to respond to my other question.
Yeah, please, can you recap?
Oh yeah, I was asking that, I think the first one you responded, I was asking that when we talk about you mentioned African art music. So I was asking about how we analyze meanings when meaning changes. Like, for example, we I mean, a music that was written during, let's say, a music that was written 10 years ago, and it has its own sociological meaning based on what was happening at that time. How do we analyze such music after 10 years? Or how do we analyze that kind of music? Or how do we think about meanings in, trying to give a very clear example. Okay, what I'm trying to say is, for example, maybe I'll delve a little bit outside of African art music. Someone wrote music, Davido's music, he wrote Femme, for example, and Davido was not referring to Femme as in political meaning, but the society changed the meaning to a political meaning based on the fact that at that time, the meaning was important for the current situation, and it became a political music to address the governor of Lagos State. So are humans allowed, is the society allowed to change meanings based on their current situation or sociological existence at that time? Or meanings cannot be dynamic? And how does this, okay.
I think the answer is direct. Of course, it is dynamic and it is never static. Even people who analyze the work of Bach, I want you to go back into art music. I mean, and you pick that work, you can still analyze it and bring your own, you know, connotations and context. Especially this being linked to your own. I mean, you didn't grow up in the Western society. Let me say, for example. So we have all of these layers of meaning, all add to the discourse about musical analysis, and we shouldn't forget the part of the structure, which even with the structure we can have arguments, we can have different meaning on that level. You look at a chord, a secondary chord of a ninth chord, for example. I remember my supervisor, even I mean, let me even talk about Agawi himself when he came to deliver a seminar at that point, and we were in that room, and this piece of music being played, and talking about the chromatic harmony, and linking it to bars before and after, and linking it to what was happening. I mean, the consolidations of art in various ways. This even linking to theories, not even sociology, not even social leanings. Do you understand? Oh, okay. If a modernist aesthetic attitude will come in this way, oh, they would say this about this. Do you understand what I'm trying to say in essence? I mean, these things are not just one way. They come from theoretical angle. They can come from sociological angle. They can come interpretation, hermeneutics, layers of meaning. So all of these are what adds meat to our analysis in music, and we should explore even beyond that. And I'm very, very well aware. I mean, when Joshua was mentioning that sincerely, you analyze an African piece of work, a piece of work by an African or a Nigerian, and you have people saying, oh, okay, the melody is this, it is logos, it is this, when there is so much more we can derive from that work. I just feel like, okay, when it comes to analysis, you have seen a lot of literature review, all these arguments around, yes, African art being this, art music being this, or African music being this. And it comes to the analysis, and you just see 2 pages, and you're like, really? You can extend these things and have something very rich and something charging. So that's what I'm really talking about. I hope that's clear.
Thank you.
So let's have Dr. Joseph, please.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon, and thank you to the presenter. Well, I've learned a lot. I'm not an expert in semiotics, but I know that what we do as scholars, in whatever field or area of specialization, is all about meaning making. That I know, and because of my my research around religion, spirituality, meaning making is central. So even when we talk about religious or what we call liturgical gesture, liturgical posture, kneeling to pray, standing to pray, sitting to pray, and all of that, these are embodied meanings. Josh, I think Joshua clarified it, I mean, pointed it out, that I also wanted to talk about, is that this meaning is not static. They are shaped by, various contexts. But I like to point out that because there's this argument or debate, if I'm clear, that yes, when people especially here in Nigeria, where scholars write, it's more of sociological content or more of musicological content. I think we also put in perspective the audience, the kind of audience you're also writing for. If you're writing for a non-expert audience, it will be a waste of time to, belabor them, with all the musical symbols and signals and all the musical, signs that we want to use to, send our message. So I think it's also important to put that in perspective. I'm not saying that I'm defending those who tilt towards sociological issues, but sometimes that could also be a consideration. My second point is that, yes, the center talks about new ways or deeper ways of, doing music analysis just beyond structural. If you want to do, in my own opinion, there are basically two ways to do music analysis. It's either you are looking at it textually or structurally. However, you may want to take the conversation deeper if you bring these two dimensions together. In one of my articles, where I looked at the work of evangelist Adilapin, Amonotete Mabo. After providing sociological context for that music, I then went into the music. For example, I theorized that the guitar, and if you listen to that music, the guitar keeps playing its interval at the end of each stanza. And I theorize that guitar, that lead guitar, symbolizes compass, because amono means compass, guide, something to guide. So in my own meaning making, I hear the guitar as the guide, returning, the ensemble, the singers, the instrumentalists, back to the music. So signifying amono, a guide, a compass, to redirect you if you miss your way. So it depends, again, the point I want to make is that it depends on the capacity of who is discussing, the tools at hand. When I say tools, writing, descriptive, musicological tools available. And then don't also forget that in our scholarship, we are not the only one talking, even as authors. We are bringing in conversation, the opinion of the artist. For instance, if we say Ilule, the person who wrote that music, what is the meaning of Ilule to that person? May not be what we as scholars or as a writer or an author will give to that song. So we are bringing multiple voices to make a whole meaning. So what I'm saying is that even what we call our meaning as authors is also a distorted meaning by our engagement with existing scholarship, our engagement with, if you even interview, for instance, if you are working with an artist and you have to interview, what does this mean for you? And the person says, this is what this thing means for me. I'll give you an example quickly. I did I've finished field work anyway with Willie Agba. And what I used to think his work is all about, or the meaning I gave to his work, is that it talks about the tension between pastors, and choristers in the church. But in my engagement with him, he provided a totally different, I mean, a meaning that is totally different. And I said, wow, if I didn't engage him, I would have gone ahead to, to make my own, to give my own meaning. So what I'm saying is that we need to also look at these multiple voices that come into conversation to give meaning to any work of art, especially within scholarly discourse. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Grace, do you want to say anything to that? Want to react to that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your view to it. But let me just start with what you ended with. As much as it is important to have multiple voices, we should also remember and note that as scholars, I mean, sometimes I think there's this school of thought which says, as much as, for example, let me say I worked on, just like you, this example you cited, I work on, I was opportune to meet the composer of the works, which I worked on for my thesis, and I heard these various views about composition. That on its own was a layer, but it didn't so much influence my own perspective to the analysis of his work, even though I bore that in mind. And I had, of course, mentioned that maybe somewhere in the thesis. And there were times where, all of this, helped in, sharpening understanding concerning the work. So it's very important to have, all of these layers in. That's why I say, I mean, the interdisciplinary angle, it's also important in chatting all of these kinds of studies. But then I think I also mentioned I had to publish one of my works in a particular journal, and I know the audience that is targeted towards. This is not a music journal, it's not music journal for music studies, and I had to do away with all of those structural analysis, all of those what Agawu would call meta language. I had to do away with that. Not totally, but I mean, to speak to an audience who will get what you're saying, I mean, a directed audience, let me put it that way. So it's very important to also bear that in mind. But we as music scholars, what do we have to, I mean, I just ask myself, Miss Dr. Ayorinde, I don't know if, anyone also thinks of it this way. In school, let's say in Nigeria, because that's where I schooled, I mean, like my undergraduate study, we do harmony, we do modal counterpoint, we do all of these studies, and then we don't bring it to bear in our analysis, in the way we talk about music, in the way we, so of what uses all of those things we're doing. That's my question. Why can't we talk about music intelligibly? I say intelligibly, not that the other ways are not. Such that somebody from anywhere can pick it up and then be on the same page with us and still understand our own, context to it. I think that's just what I'm saying here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much, everyone. I think we are approaching the end of this beautiful conversation and presentation today. Well, I think in all, we are seeing, of course, people have contributed and, added layers here and there to this beautiful conversation. But in all, there are three important areas that I think themes that have been emerging in the since we this from this presentation. The first thing is okay, let's put it this way. Meaning making works in a dynamic way. And when it comes to research, it's another layer entirely. The first layer is that there's a music or composer somewhere who wrote a song. There's somebody who is performing it. That is a line. Then then the performer is performing to people who are receiving it. That's a triangular. Now, there's a scholar who is standing somewhere, seeing this music in that context. And some might just see it on its own, on paper. The two approach to these two are not the same on the one hand. Then also there's another layer to it where, like what Dr. Samuel I just said, another layer is when, okay, this is not a scored type of music. It's like what Sheyi also mentioned. That's another approach to that. But in all of this, the meaning making still remain, follows the normal traditional, in this context of this presentation, semiotic and semantic understanding. Yeah, there's a signifier somewhere, the sound. Then there are people that it signifies something to, the signified. So getting from these two people, ability to merge the signifier, its value, and the value of the signified from wherever they be a young boy, whatever, it could be a concert, it could be a society, it could be a protest, whatever. Ability to bring them together is what makes a scholar, the beginning of the scholarly work. That's one. Number two, ability to communicate that two layer, breaking it down, communicate it to different audience is another layer of the work itself. Yeah, ability to say, okay, I want to talk about Bach and I'm going to Ajegunle. People who have never listened to Jesus Joy, and I want to write about Jesus Joy or tell them about Jesus Joy. To now go to that place with code 145 or score is not, I'm not sure. Yeah, so that is one area. But as a scholar, I should be able to go to Ajegunle, talk to those guys, tell them about Bach, Jesus Joy, in a way that they will enjoy it the same way somebody would tell them about Daddy Shoki or Papa Fryo. That is what makes the scholarly work scholarly. It's not just about, okay, I've been taught as a music theorist and everything I want to do, it should be on score, structural. No, the scholarly work is learning how to do. It's not learning something. I need to put this in a different way. The scholarly work is learning how to do something. It's a pedagogue. Yes, that's the word. So it's not shaped by one idea. I've gone to music school, I'm learning theory, and that theory, I go out do the theory. No, it's ability to learn how to do what you've learned in a multiples of ways to communicate to different audience. So I could write about jazz or Beethoven or Mozart in Journal of Religious Study. They should understand me. I could write about Baba, that what Dr. Ajose said, Woli Agba and all their paparazzi in Journal of Music Theory. They should be able to understand me based on their own framework. I should be able to write in Journal of Certified Musicology. They should be able to understand me. I should be able to write in Punch newspaper in Nigeria or New York Times to different audience. Ability to do this is what makes me, partly, I think, a scholar. Because scholarship is about communication. It's about meaning making. In the same way that being a music performer is communication. The same thing about scholarship. It's about communication, ability to communicate that big idea and give it to different audience across different places. That is what makes the scholarly work. And in this context of semiotic analysis and this and this and this, the basis is understanding that concept and ability to give it out. This includes writing, the power of writing, techniques, presentation in different ways. So that is what all this, I think, is about. Although the layers of semiotics is another layer that we need to, like Mr. Gani Kale said, we need to come back again and talk about, because there are many layers to it. In fact, in musicology, I think they don't even call it semiotics. They focus on that topic theory. In fact, topic is even a recent one, which came up in the 80s. And that came through music theorists like Agawu and his teacher who championed the idea in the 1980s.
1980s,
Yeah, in the 1980s. Yeah, the book, that's one small book he wrote on topics whatever by Leonard Ratner. The book is online also, anybody can get it. It's a very short book, but the book changed the discourse in music theory and analysis. So, and even the most important thing about the topic theory itself, even Agau and all the champions of that ideas, they have won that thing is not something that is, it's not a one thing fit all. It is amendable. It's not a one thing fit all, because the basis of topic theory is fiction. It's to fiction. It's about fiction. It's fictitious. Talking about fanfare, talking about basic topics in classical music theory, like fanfare, like march, like all the. So these are things that, according to this particular theory, is fictionized. So it is amendable. It can be used to analyze African art music and other forms of music. And apart from that, even generally, what we call theory in social sciences, like Clifford Geertz has challenged us in the 70s, are also not things that are stable like that. They are also amendable to different approach and different engagement. They are also fiction. Like Clifford Geertz said, they are fiction. The human life itself is about a story. So we are writers. So there are elements of fiction. Yeah. So we create stories of people and we analyze it. Even the idea of analysis is fictitious. Yeah. So that answers Sheyi's question. So we adjust to situations. If I take Beethoven today, analyze Beethoven perform at Mozart concert hall, it's different with I would analyze it, the same piece perform at Royal Albert or in a different way, because the cultural contexts are different. Those who perform are different. And when I pick the pieces also, whoever I'm writing for, whoever wants to read my work determines the way I engage it. So this thing, there is no one way fit all. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been an interesting journey with you. Of course, we are going to organize a follow-up to this particular presentation. Yeah, we are going to organize a follow-up. But for today, thank you so much. It's been an interesting journey, a fascinating engagement for that matter. Thanks to everyone who made it at least an engaging moment. Thank you so much. So next week is another day. Next week is our community reading section. So we are reading Bode Omojola's Art Music in Nigeria, chapter 4. And that speaks directly to this presentation, because it's talking about African pianism. Yeah, so that's a chapter on African pianism. So let's come and get ready. Of course, you watch out for our advert. We'll send the notes out there. Also to the links to the book. It's free online. We'll get you the link where you can read and come and we discuss, we learn. We will definitely reference this particular presentation because there's a close connection between the two. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. See you next week. Bye. And thanks so much to Dr. Grace. Thank you so much. That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. We'll definitely organize a comeback. Definitely. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.